sewn to perfection, carefully finished for a perfect fit, always absolutely free. That's their policy. Great fashion value and free alterations. At Men's World, where they won't let you buy it unless it fits.
Romance. It can lie waiting behind closed doors. Risk. It can be a driving force. Mystery. It can hide the secrets of a whole town. Suspense. It can hover like a ghost. Meet the people of Wingfield. For them, all these things have one thing in common. Rituals.
8 p.m. Monday, starting September 10th on Channel 5. Have we got a fall for you? Fall into the habit with PM Magazine at its new time, 8:30 weeknights, following Rituals right here on Channel 5.
Hello, everyone. I'm Danny Falkay.
And I'm Jim Caldwell. PM Magazine, Carol Burnett and friends, and Merv will not be seen tonight so that Channel 5 can proudly present a special celebrating our 40 years in television.
Now, we call it 40 Years of Fine-Tuning, and it's hosted by Carol O'Connor. So stay with us for some memorable moments in television history.
Danny and I, of course, will return with PM Magazine tomorrow night, so we'll see you then.
I'm Gertrude Berg. I usually greet you from my window as Molly with my yoo-hoo, remember? This is my new home, of which I'm equally proud. And I'm going to introduce you to your host very soon, and he's going to escort you through our wonderful new studios. I haven't seen them myself because I've been so very busy, but I'm going to go along with you, and you're going to meet many, many of the Dumont celebrities.
And away we go.
Brought to you by New York Telephone, a NYNEX company. New York lives on New York Telephone. And by Grand Union. Find all the special prices in the store with the new Price Finder for specials. And by Pampers from Procter & Gamble. America's mothers trust their babies to Pampers Dryness.
Welcome to a birthday party. This year, WNEW-TV celebrates its 40th anniversary of commercial broadcasting. 40 years of exciting, momentous, life-changing events for the country, and for television, too. This is one of the pioneers of television, Dr. Alan B. Dumont. He developed the cathode ray tube, the television tube, which could be made inexpensively and would last more than 1,000 hours, thus making mass-produced television sets possible. The first ones he sold in 1939 were a bit crude, with only 4 channels, and hard to tune. But by the time of this one, the millionth off the assembly line, a gift to Dr. Dumont from his employees with silver Tiffany panels showing his important patents. They were well-engineered machines with the largest size picture of any set sold. Built-in record player, AM and FM radio, and a handsome cabinet. As the Dumont slogan said, the first with the finest.
They need plenty of lights just as they do for a movie camera. Only with television, Lanny's image and voice are not put on film. They're miraculously transformed into electrical impulses and sent through the air. Supervising from the control room, Alan B. Dumont himself.
In 1940, 2 years after Dumont had marketed his first set and had sold maybe 1,000 of them nationwide, Paramount Pictures made a one-reeler to run between feature films, predicting their vision of the future of television. It featured Ted Husing, Lanny Ross, and a gentleman who was to become the distributor of Dumont sets for Southern California.
The radio, they have to interrupt the program to let the sponsor talk about his product. But with television, the performer can go right on with his act like this. Oh, thanks for the memory of rainy afternoons, swingy Harlem tunes, motor trips and burning lips and burning toast and prunes. How lovely it was. Thanks for the memory. Simple, isn't it?
What could a viewer watch? In 1944, CBS wasn't broadcasting because of the war. There were only 2 television stations on the air in New York. WNBT, later changed to NBC, and WABD, the call letters standing for Alan B. Dumont, which were later changed to WNEW-TV. Sam Cuff, a lecturer and newsman, helped the 4,500 New Yorkers who had sets to follow the course of World War II. 1944 was a turning point in the war in the West, with the Allies landing in Normandy, moving across France and into Germany. In the Pacific, Douglas MacArthur made good on his promise to return to the Philippines. And in that campaign, the Japanese, for the first time, made a kamikaze attack on our ships. But replacements were coming as the USS Missouri slid down the ways of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I remember where I was. I was a merchant seaman on an old tub bringing ammunition to Italy. But even on those ships, we were reading that racy novel, Forever Amber. And on Broadway, the popular shows were Annie Get Your Gun with Ethel Merman and Harvey with Jimmy Stewart. Downtown at the old Wanamaker's department store, WABD built what was described as the largest television studio in the East, where shoppers could stroll by and look through the glass walls at the show business that was to come, television, and programs like Country Stars, starring Peggy Ann Ellis.
Our show was kind of a Western and country style combination with square dancing. And of course it was live, as all those shows in those days. And black and white, and the lights were bright and hot. This is color because I had a friend shoot it on 16mm film. We were all brash and terribly young in those days. I think our show was probably the first musical on television. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think one of the first that had a storyline every week. And of course we had our little stock company of players, the sheriff, Gordon Dilworth, and Patty Adair, the dancer, and marvelous family feeling. We also had a very unusual happening when we were down at Wanamaker's. There was a severe storm one night, and we had a power failure. And in Alvy West's orchestra were a couple of wonderful musicians, Dick Hyman on piano, Bob Rosengarten on drums. So what did we do while everything was blown? We had a jam session, and it was great. Of course, that wasn't what we did on the show. It was country and western. But after all, you know, in the 40s and 50s, that sound was the big bands.
A good time was had by all. The wedding guests enjoyed their call. Their friends and relatives.
If you can recognize my voice not from a latter-day commercial, but from hearing me croon, "A good time was had by all," then you can come on to my house. I'm Rosemary Clooney, formerly the girl singer. That's what we were called back in pre-Women's Lib days with the Tony Pastor Band. And we were on Dumont a lot. The bands were tremendously popular, and were on Channel 5 for years, all the great ones. This is Carmen Cavallero, and there was Sammy Kaye, Woody Herman, Benny Goodman, and his singer Francis Langford, the Dorsey brothers, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Errol Garner, Dave Brubeck, Harry James, just about all the greats. And there were variety shows each week with more music. The Maury Amsterdam show was one. I sang at Maury's place, the Silver Swan Cafe.
Thank you. Johnny. Why do you think I am just a baby?
Joe Sullivan was on the Cavalcade of Stars.
Just a child. Why do you think I go around with men for? And who do you think I've got a little yen for? I was humming a tune, freaking
A good friend, Vivian Blaine.
out of that orange-colored view. Flash! Bam! Alakazam! I gotta look at you. Dream a while. Scheme a while.
Connie Haynes was on Cavalcade of Bands.
Should have find happiness and again all the things that you always find. But when my own true
Edie Adams on the Kovacs Show.
is fine.
Remember the singing groups? Before there were groupies. The Ames Brothers. The Modernaires. And the DeMarco sisters. Of course, there were the boy singers, too. Look at him. He really was a boy then.
I think that the first time I appeared on the Amsterdam show was virtually my first television appearance. Maury was very kind to me. We're still great friends whenever we see each other. It's a loving embrace and a delightful reunion. And at that time, he did an awful lot for me from a standpoint of sort of beat the drums for me as a singer and as a songwriter. And one of his favorite songs, apparently, was A Stranger in Town, which I had written in 1943. So when the time came to do the show, there was no question in his mind that he wanted me to sing Stranger in Town.
It hurts to be alone with no one of your own when you're a stranger in your own hometown.
And we'll be back in a moment with an act of our own.
What's that, a different Grand Union price finder?
Oh, Helen, yes, a Red Dot special price finder. It shows all the store specials.
I don't have to look all over for them? They're all right there?
Not only that, you don't wait for weekly food ads for specials. You get them all here every single day.
Hey, I'll check my shopping list against this. I won't miss any bargains.
Right, and they still have the regular price finder that proves their low regular prices.
The regular price finder for low regular prices and the Red Dot special price finder for specials. ShopRite and Pathmark don't do it. Grand Union does.
Patty just found a terrific new diaper. Oh, I know, Patty. It's her new Pampers, and they've really changed. Just look at that great new shape. You're right. It's almost shaped just like a baby, and they stay so dry now. Patty can just about say bye-bye to wetness. Yeah. Bye-bye. She thinks it's because they're so much thicker now, to absorb more. And to absorb more. That's right. Her old Pampers couldn't absorb all this in a million years, but these new Pampers absorb more than ever to really stay dry next to baby's skin. And these wonderful new double elastics. What? You're right. It really fits nice and snug. Oh. Today's new Pampers, they stay so dry now, your baby can just about say bye-bye to wetness. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And one of the most eclectic singers to be heard on Channel 5, and not to be confused with the boy singers, Mr. Robert Merrow, and at the piano, Mr. Joe Raposo, both of whom spent time with Channel 5. Bob, WABD started carrying the Yankees in 1947. When did you begin singing the national anthem for them?
Well, actually, not then. I was quite young. No, at 67 I started, so it's 17 years now.
That's wonderful.
Because I've always wanted to be a Yankee, you know.
I know.
For an ex-prize fighter.
I played in the...
Very few people know this man as a fighter.
Did you, were you on the Cavalcade of Stars?
Yes, I was on the Cavalcade of Stars for many years. I think I was on the first or second week of it. And after Gleason's jokes and the jugglers, there were a little spot there for a singer occasionally, and then Ernie Kovacs.
Are any of those Kinneys left?
I don't know, but one quite epic appearance on Channel 5 has been found. In the early 50s, Bizet's Common was broadcast live from the old Met, probably the first live television broadcast from the Metropolitan Opera House to motion picture theaters around the country. I had the great pleasure of playing opposite Risa Stevens.
In the early days, even the detective shows had live music. Usually a piano or an organ to sound ominous, like this. And up until the 70s, nearly all the information and interview shows had live music. For a couple of years, I was the theme composer and resident piano player around Channel 5, but I can remember another musician who was resident 2 decades earlier, and the phenomenon of lip-syncing to records.
Hi, I'm Tony Mottola, and I could make my guitar sound pretty ominous, too. And I did for The Stranger. That was an early mystery drama. But you know, the most fun I had on Channel 5, even though you couldn't hear much of my guitar, was with the most elaborate of the lip-sync programs, Melody Street. And I know about that one firsthand.
Hi, I'm Tony Mottola. Happy to welcome you this first day of 1954 to Melody Street, your street of dreams, music, and imagination. This week, everybody's reviewing the highlights of the past year. Magazines, newspapers, TV shows, and we thought you might like to take a stroll back along Melody Street and stop at some of the musical corners we visited in 1953. Now, I'm not going to do much talking tonight because we want to recap as many as we can. Do you remember this one? When we went off at a gallop pace on Columbia's Deadwood stage with Doris Day.
It was a joy to do that show because the people were so great. You could not tell that they were lip-syncing, really. They were just marvelous.
A beautiful sky, a wonderful day. Whip, crack away, whip, crack away, whip, crack away.
In what was obviously a copy of the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, then only on radio, WABD aired Doorway to Fame, which more than 20,000 acts tried out for in the first year. Then the next year, Dumont got the real article, the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. It went on the air as the first nationally sponsored program on television, with the highest percentage of TV viewers, perhaps still in television history. Half of all the viewers watch the Amateur Hour, although seeing it now makes you wonder why it was so incredibly popular.
To me, like New England has some wonderful acrobats. I think the little youngsters who were on last week were from New England, too. Well, now we have a 41-year-old machine tool inspector from Worcester, Massachusetts. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Bill Walker and his musical song.
It was in 1955 that the Dumont network ended, and Channel 5 became an independent station. 3 years later, the call letters were changed from WABD to WNEW-TV. One of the last musical shows on the Dumont network was the Les Paul and Mary Ford show. I I think they were the first ones to use the technique of overdubbing their own voices. The more modern era of Channel 5 has seen some particularly fine music, both contemporary and classical. Through the 60s and 70s, there were a number of musical specials and guest shots by fine musicians.
And when they see when I come home to you, San Francisco.
No, no, they can't take that away from me. No, they can't take that away from me.
You know, Rosie and Joe, I'll always remember Channel 5 for the grand comics and the grand opera.
Yeah, yeah. My own personal recollection is the driving sound of the big bands. It's the most exciting thing in the world.
And for me, I guess, this being New York, the big Broadway musicals, that was good stuff.
Nothing makes life in New York more livable than New York Telephone.
You know I can't live without you. I can't smile without you. I can't laugh and I can't sing. I'm finding it hard to do anything.
You know, whenever you pick up a phone and hear the dial tone, that's us at work. Because New York Telephone is always working, the same way we have been for nearly a century. Serving business with the latest technology and serving all New York Telephone customers with the best possible service at the lowest possible rates. Now, what could make life in New York more livable than that?
I'm finding it hard to do anything. Oh, I can't live without
New York lives on New York Telephone.
can't smile without.
Power. It can be the ultimate drug. Wealth. It can be something to play with. Fame. It can be an obsession. Beauty. It can be the only key to success. Meet the people of Wingfield. For them, all these things have one thing in common. Rituals.
8 p.m. Monday starting September 10th on Channel 5.
The 50s are always called the golden age of television. Have you ever thought why? Is it all some kind of hoax by the performers, directors, and producers who are now mature and would like to remember the formative days of television in a somewhat better light than they actually deserved? Well, maybe in part. There was some incredibly silly shows on the air then, and sophisticated production techniques were just beginning to evolve. But on the whole, I think it was a golden age. We were, all of us, learning and growing, and it was a terribly exciting time. Even the Cavalcade of Stars, basically a comedy show then hosted by Jerry Lester, had time for fine drama.
The girl to be played by Miss Kim Stanley, and the boy, ladies and gentlemen, by Mr. John Garfield. Come on, Oliver. I'll walk you to your house. I'm in your hotel. Do you have the same room?
You're a fresh kid.
When you see him tonight, you're Mr. Moody. Tell him from me that the next world's champ is feeding in his stable.
Britannia book?
From A to Z.
And you're only 21?
And a half.
Something's wrong someplace.
I don't know.
It's very unusual for these early shows to still be around. Dumont invented a system called teletranscription to put live television on black and white film so programs could be sent to stations around the country. Remember, this was before there was a microwave or cable hookup among stations. But unfortunately, very few of these kidneys, which is what NBC called them, still survive from any of the networks. And none from Dumont, starring Richard Kiley.
No, that's right. Only the memories remain, Carol. In my mind, and hopefully with some of the viewers of the dozens of shows I did on Dumont Network, my earliest recollection is kind of an amusing one. I was doing a thing called The Story of Stanley Ketchel, the famous boxer. And it was about 10 minutes to airtime. We'd done the rehearsal and done the dress rehearsal. And I was sitting in the dressing room, and the guy I was playing with, who was playing my trainer, who was an older actor, let fall the fact that he was getting $25 for the show. And I said, "What?" I said, "I'm only getting 15. And he said, "Well, gee, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it." So I threw down my makeup and I ran out and ran into the booth where I found the director, and I said, "What the hell is this?" I said, "This guy's getting 25. He said, "Would you please go out? We're ready to go on air." I said, "I'm leaving." And I started to get my stuff, and he ran after me into the studio, and he said, "This is blackmail." I said, "Call it what you want. I'm desperate." So in front of witnesses, he said, "Okay, I'll pay you $25.
One of the first of a long parade of fine actors on Channel 5 was the distinguished Charles Laughton.
Hello. Mott's, for over 100 years, makers of fine apple products, and Sunsweet prune juice, present This is Charles Laughton.
Like, if I may, to read you my favorite psalm. This is Psalm 139. O Lord, Thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down-sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways.
The majority of the dramatic material of the 50s on Dumont were melodramas and mysteries, most often detective mysteries.
Rogers died a couple of hours ago in the hospital. You just confessed to a nice, big, fat homicide.
Ralph Bellamy starred in Man Against Crime, aided and abetted by the likes of Jack Albertson.
The city is sending a limousine. Look what I won in a crap game. Well, this part I do not wish to be present at, so with your kind permission, I'll retire from active participation in this affray.
Hold it. That money you won in the crap game last night, you know, was mine.
Oh, sure, sure. I was going to return it to you. I just forgot.
Rocky King Detective, starring Roscoe Carnes.
Who was killed?
But the most successful of the Dumont detectives was Rocky King with Roscoe Carnes, which ran for nearly 6 years. Carnes was joined later in the series by Todd, his son, and they talked to each other in one of the first superimposed shots on live television, joined by a faithful assistant and an equally faithful wife, whom you heard in every show but never saw.
I want to get as much done tonight as possible. I've got a very important engagement tomorrow afternoon. I'll see you there.
Oh, what's the important engagement, dear? Junior's football game?
Certainly is. You know, I'm not a slave. I'm entitled to some relaxation.
Oh, certainly you are. Oh, dear, I wish they had their uniforms. I'm afraid he might get hurt.
Oh, no, dear. He's playing with kids that's his same age. That's all right.
Well, would you mind if he wore a suit of your long underwear? I could pad it in several spots.
Well, that's all right, and you can turn it up the bottom. That'll give him double protection for his shins. Yeah, but don't weight him down too much. He won't be able to get out of his own way. You know, speed is the thing. Oh, that's Captain Murray outside there. Don't wait up for me. I'm sure to be late. Goodbye, dear.
Sure, that's how it happened that I became Mabel. On that first script, when they wrote in the scene for the wife, and they said, we can't show you. I'd already been on as two people.
That's right.
And because that's the way they did him in those days, and I said, that was fine. And then they said, we may use you again, because Rocky likes the idea of having a wife. Makes them more human, which was one of his marvelous qualities. And I said, shall I leave next week open? 5 years.
You know, if I could find a girl like you, I'd marry her, Mrs. King.
Well, it certainly won't do you any harm.
Huh?
That was all good, nourishing food. It'll never hurt you.
I suppose it will.
Do you remember when we were at the Ambassador Theater? I ran out into the street with a drawn gun, and this cop was standing there with a gun on me?
Yes.
Because nobody had told the precinct that we were going to use the street? By the time we got the murders all wrapped up, and the criminals were taken away, and the fingerprints were done, we were ready for the commercial.
That's right. What, dear? Certainly it's the fastest effervescent in the headache field. Yeah, I'm going to have some myself, dear. You betcha. What? Oh, yes, honey. Yes, dear. I'll be right home. Mm-hmm. Just a few minutes. Goodbye, dear. Wonderful girl, that Mabel. Wonderful drink, this bromo seltzer.
Many of the programs of the 50s were not so innocuous. It was the time of the Korean War, the Berlin Wall, the time of Senator Joe McCarthy, and a real fear among segments of the general public about the influence of communism. Some television dramas echoed these feelings. One of the most technically inventive series in this time of live television on any network was On Location, which traveled to actual settings all over the New York area to use as background for their dramas. This action takes place in the Sherwin-Williams paint factory in Newark, where the ex-boyfriend of the hero's sweetheart has, for revenge, accused our hero of being a commie.
A commie agent, yeah. Yeah. You think I'm bullying you, huh?
Years before The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling wrote of the dilemma of a Czech national, now an American citizen, asked to help his mother country.
So if you don't mind...
It must take considerable practice to throw these knives. Practice, application, cool nerves.
Yes. Very much the same requirements as being a spy.
My thanks, comrade.
You know, I don't know how you feel about it, but one of the things that appealed to me about live television was the fact that it seemed to combine the positive aspects of the stage and camera, in that you had the ongoing thing of the stage where you start to develop a scene and you build and you build and you build, with the intimacy of the camera, which could get in. You could play very subtly, you could see your eyes, you wouldn't have to, you know, project to the back of a 1,000-seat house.
But I also remember that live, I was scared to death.
Oh, we all were.
Most of the time. Sure. I once played a prison chaplain who had to cross the prison yard with a prisoner. Robert Duvall was the prisoner. They break up something, and as I crossed the prison yard, the prison wall fell in. So those things happen. Those were among the joys of life.
The golden days.
The golden days. One of the series which was literally golden for New York actors was Colonel Humphrey Flack. The Colonel, played by Alan Mowbray, who was assisted by Frank Jenks, was a lovable rogue who conned the con men and swindled the swindlers, and in the process used dozens of fine actors.
What?
swindled out of Captain Carpenter in order to get the inheritance for himself.
Garvey, is this true?
I ain't talking.
Jay Black.
Martin Balsam?
Black and Company, huh?
You've heard of us, of course?
Of course. Well, I get a chance.
Louis Nye?
A lot of losers, of course. I tell them, you never hear of a horse betting on a man, do you?
Margaret Hamilton?
Colonel Flack and companion.
We'd like a two-room suite, Miss...
Mrs. Lewis.
Mrs. Lewis.
I can give you 2 adjoining rooms.
With private bath, of course.
The bath is private. If you shut the door.
There's some of the boys getting in the mood for Pioneers Day. Black 10 on the red jacket.
Yes, I know.
Pioneer Day?
Yes, tomorrow.
Gene
To celebrate the founding of the town. Oh, it's just a chance for everybody to get the Wild West out of their systems.
I know that lady. Infant television was an excellent training ground for actors, writers, and directors, and a source of work for the West Coast film people as well.
But many of the East Coast live dramas were not put on film, or the kidneys have been lost, and so the performances.
Fortunately, one of the most exciting series of Metro Media's early days was recorded. It was the Festival of the Performing Arts, produced by David Susskind. Now for a few brief excerpts of superb acting.
Like most Midwesterners, I have never had any but the vaguest race prejudice. I always had a secret yen for the lovely Scandinavian blondes who sat on porches in St. Paul, but hadn't emerged economically to be part of what was then society. They were too nice to be called chickens, and too quickly off the farmlands to seize a place in the sun. But I remember going round blocks to catch a glimpse of shining hair. The bright shock of a girl I'd never know.
James Joyce's Ulysses. Bloom fantasizes about his youth. He tries to recapture a bit of it. I was in my teens, a growing boy. A little then sufficed, a jolting car, the mingling odors of the ladies' cloakrooms, the throng pent tight on the old royal stairs, for they love crushes, instincts of the herd, and the dark sex-smelling theaters unbridles vice, and then the heat. There were sunspots that summer, end of school and tipsy cake. Halcyon days. I was precocious. Youth, the fawns. I sacrificed to the god of the forest, the flowers that bloom in the spring. It was parent time. Capillary attraction is a natural phenomenon. Lottie Clark, flaxen-haired. I saw her at night toilet through ill-closed curtains with poor Papa's opera glasses. She rolled downhill a Trialto bridge to tempt me with a flow of animal spirits. She climbed a crooked tree and I, a saint, couldn't resist. A demon possessed me. Besides, who saw? Done.
The new Grand Union Price Finder for specials contains all the specials in the store, hundreds of them. Here's a sample. Lipton tea bags, 100 count, only $1.49 with coupon. Post Raisin Bran, 20-ounce box, just $1.59. Aunt Jemima Original Pancake Mix, 2-pound box, 79 cents. With this new Price Finder for specials, you won't miss specials or have to wait for weekly food ads. It's a new way to shop for bargains only at Grand Union.
Every weeknight at 9, New York Telephone lowers its rates 35%, which makes life in New York a lot more livable.
I can't live without you. I can't smile without you. I can't laugh and I can't sing.
25% lower rates after 9 p.m. Now, what could make life in New York more livable than that? New York lives on New York Telephone.
Stick 'em here, stick 'em there. New Pampers refasten anywhere.
New Pampers now have refastenable tapes. Easy to use refastenable tapes that stick anywhere, over and over again. It makes checking your baby's diapers simple, quick, and easy.
Stick 'em here, stick 'em there. New Pampers refasten everywhere.
New Pampers, now with refastenable tapes. It's really easy, isn't it? Huh?
The excitement of television can be measured and remembered by events and the programs of a particular decade. And the decade of the 60s was exhilarating and terrible in America. John Kennedy was elected and assassinated. It was a faraway war. There were anti-war marches on Washington. There were wrongs in the land and civil rights marches to put the wrongs right. Hoover, Eisenhower, and Churchill died. A singing group called the Beatles was born. There was a far-out ending to the decade as the first men walked on the moon. What a lot to talk about. And for television, besides covering all these events, the decade of the 60s was also the time to talk about them.
Just before we came on the air, I said to Betty Furness, Betty, I'm becoming an old-timer myself. I've been doing this 10 years, and you looked at me like I'm still a rookie.
You are. You're a nice kid. And you're going to be all right when you have a little experience.
Let me review, in case somebody just landed from another city. Betty Furness is a Channel 4 consumer reporter, but she was here on a program, I don't know which year, which was called Fashions Coming and Going.
Fashions Coming and Becoming.
Oh, Coming and Becoming. Yeah. And you were known as Nancy
Dixon.
Why Nancy Dixon?
Well, it was a sponsored program. It was 1945. It was sponsored by Sanforized, which was a process that was used to keep cotton from shrinking. And Sanforized had a name like Betty Crocker. It was Nancy Dixon. So I was Nancy Dixon.
And Clay, you're a publisher. You're not really a television personality, but you hosted one really memorable show here.
It was called The Friends Of,
yeah.
And the various people came on, and mine was The Friends of Clay Felker. And I had a lot of very talkative, contentious people.
Joyce Davison-Susskind is a former host of The Joyce Davison Show, also the former co-host of PM East with Mike Wallace. And Skitch Henderson, we know as a fine musician, conductor of the New York Pops, former host of the Skitch Henderson's New York. Let's talk working conditions, Betty. Back in 1945, what was it like to be in television then?
I tell you what it was, basically was hot.
Yes.
Especially the show that I did on Channel 5, because it was Dumont at the time. It wasn't in a studio. It was done in an office building over on Madison Avenue and 53rd Street. And the lights were just at ceiling height. And it was so hot that we wore bandanas and heavy makeup and dark glasses to rehearse. And one day I said, this is really too hot. And I brought a room thermometer from home and I laid it on the table, which was considerably lower than my head. And the thermometer was broken at 132 within 5 minutes. Wow. And my head was closer to the lights than that.
The reason was that the cameras, the primitive early television cameras, needed to have all this intense light.
Enormous amount of light.
By the time I got to Channel 5, the climate for talk shows had changed some, but there was one similarity. Up to a few years ago, at least, almost all of the talk and information shows had a resident conductor, an orchestra conductor, or a band of some kind. I was lucky because I had the resident maestro of my show was Mr. Joe Raposo, great composer, talented pianist, nice man.
Did you think, Skitch, that, because you had that, wonderful experience on the Tonight Show, so close to Carson and everyone else?
Everybody else, yeah, because I started it with
that
Steve.
You kind of got it, it was Steve Allen, right? That you were kind of getting it by osmosis, that you had learned to do it just by watching them?
Well, I thought because I knew the technical side, that I knew the aesthetic side. And I found that I didn't, I found that you get your head handed to you every day, I think, sitting in your chair. I found myself coming to work every day thinking, oh, God, what will I do wrong today? When I did begin to get comfortable, they let me go.
Good. By the late 60s, the studio gave way to location with the gentleman who is now certainly on location, Gene Rayburn.
1969 it was when we were the very first of the reality programs. And it happened mainly because someone finally invented a small, lightweight handheld camera. And we used it to explore the people and neighborhoods of New York. We used New York City as a background. We were the very first of the reality shows. This is called the United Nations Barber Shop. I guess because it's just a couple of blocks from the United Nations, right, Tom? One block, yeah. You get any diplomats who come in here?
Well, I tell you, we have a lot of delegates and different ambassadors. We had Goldberg when he had his job here.
Yes.
And we get them from all over the world.
And leaping a little more than a decade into nearly the present, we come to Saturday morning. Another groundbreaking program. A serendipitous experience when they threw me together with a great cast of characters. We created something new and exciting. And would you believe a grown man would do so much for his art?
I seem to sometimes follow Gene around. I'm now hosting Saturday morning, and my series Midday came out of the New Yorkers, Mr. Henderson's New York, and Gene's Hell of a Town. We must have had on the show all of the celebrities of the last dozen years.
I would say I don't deny it.
I used to do a lot of live television.
I need to do more running.
I don't feel differently about myself.
I will respond with the same sophistication.
I look forward to today.
I never think in terms of that.
Do you feel good? Ich bin euer Conferencier.
I can't tell you anything about it. I never met her. I had nice friends.
I will raise my hands up in a victory sign, and in my head, I turn those boos into cheers.
Well, my show, too, was a product of the 60s, which I shared with a gentleman who'd started on Channel 5 a few years before, Mike Wallace. PM East had some regulars, 2 kids. One was called Barbara Streisand, and the other was called Woody Allen.
Well, you mean they
and
were
would
just
come
regular
on,
guests?
Yes, they'd come on about once a week, twice a week if they could fit it in between, you know, being down in the village. I did a show one night. I had Mickey Rooney, and I said, could Barbara come? So it was Mickey Rooney, Barbara, and I was the host. Well, Barbara and Mickey. Hey, Mickey, I mean, we should go to Rome, she said. I mean, me with my nose and you with your, well, were you always that height?
And looking back in the 1956, here's Mike Wallace.
A little under 4 years ago, a junior copywriter in Esquire magazine's promotion department quit in a huff after he was refused a $5 raise. And that refusal turned out to be one of the worst decisions ever made at Esquire because the name of that copywriter was Hugh Hefner. He is now the editor and publisher of Playboy magazine, which claims to have pushed Esquire right out of first place as the magazine for American men. Just how did Hugh Hefner start Playboy? What kind of a magazine is it? What kind of a man is Hugh Hefner? Stay tuned. Here at CBS, or ABC, or NBC, you somehow don't have the same license to try. In other words, if you're on the network, it's got to be pretty good. You're in the major leagues. When you're at a Channel 5, for instance, and back in the 1950s, there was a sense of innovation. People were willing to try something to find out if it worked. So we experimented with the news, and in the same way, when we decided to jettison the 11 o'clock news and put Nightbeat in its place, that was not to put too fine a point on it, it was a kind of pioneering undertaking. For instance, nowadays, this shot, this close-up, warts and all shot, doesn't bother people excessively. May not be the best-looking shot in the world, but it doesn't offend people. Back in those days, it was revolutionary. There was talk, of course, that we were being self-consciously sensational. But sensational is not necessarily a bad word. If the sensation is seriously undertaken. You don't think that there's anything that is morally destructive in anything that is in Playboy magazine? Well, your pictures of nude women in suggestive and provocative poses, dirty, out-and-out dirty jokes. You don't think that this is at all a bad influence on a 10 to 16-year-old young man or young woman?
I don't think you'll find what I would consider to be dirty jokes in the magazine.
Oh, sir. I'll give I'll give you a book, chapter, and verse, but I wouldn't dare.
You have a problem here.
Yes, yes. I think that that's hedging a good deal.
Well, you know, people are still saying the same thing to Hugh Hefner. Let's get into talking a little bit about the Friends of series.
It was a bunch of people who know each other, and it was a conversation among friends because the cameras were not in evidence.
There's nothing wrong with any president trying to gain control.
No, that's right, and there are probably very good reasons.
And there are those who say yes. That,
I would say yes, that it should be done.
Well, I think that the great untold story of the Nixon-Ford administrations is the battle of the president, either Nixon or Ford, particularly Nixon and Kissinger, in order to gain control, political control, over the intelligence agencies.
Channel 5 here was our flagship station for the Nixon interviews, which was an unforgettable experience all around. And luckily we were able to peel off more layers than anyone had anticipated of that curious, enigmatic Nixon character. More layers, in fact, than we expected. Parts of the interviews, of course, were gentler, drawing him out about the trip to China and so on. And then some of them were tougher. As he described it, prosecution and defense at times.
I mean, if I try and rob a bank and fail, that's no defense. I still tried to rob a bank. I would say you still tried to obstruct justice and succeeded for that period.
The case for the defense here is this. You use the term obstruction of justice. You perhaps have not read the statute with regard to obstruction of justice. The statute doesn't require just an act. The statute has the specific provision. One must corruptly impede a judicial...
Well, a corrupt endeavor is enough.
All right. Was a an endeavor, corrupt intent, but it must be corrupt. And that gets to the point of motive. One must have a corrupt motive. Now, I did not have a corrupt motive.
And one of the earliest exponents of open discussions, from whom we all took a page, is David Susskind.
We've done so many shows, and we've covered virtually every subject under the sun. Now, our reasons for picking a subject are simple. Is it interesting? Is it entertaining? Can we be informative? We're going to show you just two examples of the wide range of subjects and guests. The first, a solo interview with former President Harry S. Truman, which we taped in September of 1961.
I wanted to ask you a really personal question.
Shoot.
In the pre-convention days of 1960, the last convention of the Democratic Party, did you ever contemplate running yourself, the presidency?
No. If I'd want to run for the presidency, I've done it in 1952 when I quit. I quit because I thought I'd made the contribution, all the contribution that I could make for the welfare of the country. I had been in the Senate for 10 years, had been in politics at home for at least 10 or 12 years, and when you've been in that routine for 38 or 40 years, it's about time for you to quit and do something else and give somebody else a chance. You know what the trouble is with these old birds that hang on to their offices and don't give the youngsters a chance to come on? They keep people from being educated to run the government of the United States, and it's not right.
Now, the second clip is an excerpt from what has become a classic, How to Be a Jewish Son, with the inspired Mel Brooks.
If you meet a Jewish girl and shake her hand, that's dinner. You owe her dinner. Huh? If you should take her home after dinner and rub around and kiss in the doorway, right? That's already a small ring, a ruby, something. If, God forbid, anything filthy should happen amongst you, that's marriage and the same grave. Jewish ladies expect a lot.
For a little.
They do expect a lot, and they deserve a lot, because they're short-waisted and terrific in bed.
We'll be right back.
This booklet, the Grand Union Price Finder, helped you find the lowest regular supermarket prices. It has no specials in it, but this new Red Dot Special Price Finder has all the specials in your Grand Union, hundreds of them. Don't wait for weekly newspaper ads. Don't wonder if you'll miss the best specials. Get a free Red Dot Special Price Finder. Check your shopping list with it and save. Grand Union proves low regular prices in the regular price finder and now gives you all their special prices in the Red Dot Special Price Finder. ShopRite and Pathmark don't do it. Grand Union does.
The world
The events in it shape our destinies.
2, 1.
And the reporting of these events shape our thoughts.
Palestinian woman finds her
The newscasters of the Channel 5 10 o'clock news team respect this tremendous responsibility. So we report the news the way you deserve to hear it. Without sugarcoating, without distraction, with detail, with professionalism. The 10 o'clock news. We give it to you straight.
A brand new season on Too Close for Comfort starts October 1st.
Channel 5, 40 years of fine-tuning Channel 5.
It seems appropriate to talk about the news on its own set. 40 years ago, WABD's news department was one man, Sam Cuff, who was also the program manager. For some years after, Sam, an announcer, would just read the wire copy stories, sometimes with a little film or a couple of still pictures. Dumont didn't have the background and resources of a radio network, no Edward R. Murrow in wartime London or H.V. Kaltenborn in Washington. But slowly, an expertise and a style did develop.
Shall it continue?
First, it was the Kefauver hearings with Frank Costello.
I refuse to answer.
Then the Army McCarthy hearings, day after fascinating day covered by WTTG, the Dumont station in Washington.
The answer is no. You will not get that information. You wish then to put your own interpretation on your own, tell us less than the whole truth? Mr. Welch, I think I've made it very clear to you that neither you nor anyone else will ever get me to violate the confidence of loyal people in this government who give me information about communist infiltration.
The major innovation in Channel 5's coverage came in March 1967, when the 10 o'clock news began.
This is Christopher Jones, Metro Media, Moscow. The funeral of Yuri Andropov was held today on a cold, clear afternoon under a bright sun.
Long before we actually arrived in guerrilla territory, we began to feel the atmosphere of El Salvador.
We started our walk at about 9 o'clock last night, and we walked until 10 o'clock this morning, which was just a few minutes ago when we arrived here. This is a rebel-held military outpost.
At first, the authorities limited their firing to tear gas in an effort to drive the students back. But that failed, as did rubber bullets. Then the Israelis started shooting at the students, not over their heads. And for all but 4 hours of the early afternoon, the residents of this city, Hebron, were told they would have to stay off the streets, inside their homes.
Is it revolution or is it hooliganism? There are many in Northern Ireland, Catholic and Protestant alike, who see this kind of destructive violence as nothing more than wild kids taking any opportunity they can get to strike out at any symbol of authority.
Did he try to rob you? Yeah. What happened? Three of them came in there. Yeah. And he pulled a sawed-off shotgun. Yeah. That's all. This is the shotgun right here? Right. Is this the first time you've ever shot anyone? Yep. Huh? Yep. What hit you on the head? One of them punched me. Three of them got after me. Yeah? Well, I went after them.
Thursday, the 14th of July, the day after the night of Black Wednesday, the 13th. Good evening, I'm Bill Jorgensen, and this is the 10 o'clock news.
We're now inside the Bronx House of Detention. We're in the north wing. This is a dormitory area. You're going to see the type of real concern that there was here for an escape.
Health Department officials say the cold weather is a blessing. They say it'll keep the garbage from deteriorating too quickly. In the meantime, the city has contingency plans standing by. John Miller, Channel 5 News.
As far as the police were concerned, the confrontation couldn't have come at a worse time, when thousands of working hard hats were on their lunch break and clearly in no mood to entertain the jeers and the taunts of the demonstrators. They beat a chilling cadence on the pavement with crude weapons, spanner wrenches, pieces of pipe, and steel rods.
The lines swelled at many service stations, and motorists drove north and west of the city in search of available gas. On East Houston Street, the line ran 7.5 blocks, and motorists had to wait up to 3 hours.
The moment some had been waiting for 2 hours. A burst of cheers like a bottle uncorked. The rally for more than 20,000 here at Madison Square Garden was billed as Youth in Concert with Pope John Paul II.
In addition to co-anchoring the 10 o'clock news, I'm the anchor and executive producer of Channel 5's Black News. The program was created back in 1970 to deal with the lack of positive exposure of blacks in the media. The program is designed to focus on the black community in particular and the minority communities in general. This includes local, national, and international events. The show was welcomed by both the white and the black communities. Blacks and other minorities view it as an outlet and a chance to be heard in a positive manner. Some of the whites I've spoken with about the program say that it's enlightened their perception of the black community. We've interviewed personalities, black and white, young and old, artists and laborers, company presidents and politicians.
There was a kind of spirit that existed at Channel 5 when I was there, and I was covering general assignments and mostly the politics of New York. And we did it usually in a rather unorthodox way. I remember the mayoral campaign of 1977 when we came up with the idea of we the jury. We impaneled a jury of 12 men and women representing a diversity of neighborhoods, ethnic, religious, racial backgrounds.
In the last poll, Harnett, Koch, and Cuomo led in that order. On this one, the foreman announced the results.
Beam minus 39, Koch plus 83, Cuomo plus 45, Harnett plus 27.
I knew that I was going to win when the jury came out in my favor. And here I'm running against 6 other candidates, and they selected me, is my recollection. I remember that experience very well. It reinforced my faith in the American jury system. I, in a sense, was part of Channel 5 for an extended period of time because when I was a member of Congress, back in, I think it was 76, 77, when I first came on the program to debate with Dr. Martin Aband. And I come back from time to time whenever they invite me to bring people up to date on what the mayor is doing. I've always found Channel 5 to be very fair in its coverage of City Hall. Sometimes they beat me up, sometimes they say nice things about me, but I've never thought of them as being other than fair, if on occasion in error.
We have always treated our mayors and our colleagues on Channel 5 with respect tempered by the truth. Some stories are more appropriate for a detailed treatment. A lot of the early documentaries on Channel 5 dealt with personalities. One of the best remembered is James Faulkner's word and picture portrait of his native Mississippi.
He had lived in that society all his life and was torn by conflicts of conscience. Yet he wrote of it with compassion and understanding, seeing in it its virtues and its faults.
My childhood was as American as apple pie and really as the 4th of July. The memories I have of my childhood are happy ones. They're very good memories.
In the cruel nightmare that was my childhood, there was one place, one refuge, a hill in Central Park. From that hill, I could see Harlem. I could see the dark and brooding ghetto. From that hill, I could also see downtown.
Another concern of Channel 5 documentaries was health.
In the late 1950s, the medical series A Question of Life shows for the first time on television the technique of reviving a patient's heart, which had stopped during surgery.
Half-minute.
A decade later saw another Channel 5 first, open heart surgery, broadcast live in Miracle in OR 5. Last year, the tradition of fine medical documentaries was continued with an examination of the emergency room at the Jersey City Medical Center.
Our documentaries and all the primetime shows end at 9:58:20, followed by a commercial, the station break, and something I've always wanted to do. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? That has to be one of the most recognizable sentences in New York television, and it comes from Channel 5's commitment to community affairs programming, which started back in the 40s.
The chimes of historic Healy Tower tell us that it's time for the 24th in a series of televised Georgetown University forums.
Rutgers University and this station present a report from Rutgers.
About 20 years ago, Channel 5's executives perceived the need to serve a part of the community that television had largely ignored, the minority people of the metropolitan area. They hired a young black woman as co-host of the first program on television anywhere about and for a minority neighborhood. It was Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant with Roxy Roker.
Hello, I'm Jim Lowry.
And I'm Roxy Roker. Welcome to Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant. Bedford-Stuyvesant is a neighborhood of families and wonderful schools at that particular time and when I grew up. And during the 1960s, it was really being projected to the broader community and throughout the country as a ghetto. I mean, that was a popular word for it then, a ghetto. We could talk to people in the community about the wonderful parts. Everybody else knew about the negatives, but we wanted to project on that show some wonderful positive things, and I think we did it.
In 1969, I became co-host of the show with Joe Dennis, and you'll see a slightly nervous Marion Etoile on her debut.
And, can I call you by your first name? Tate. How about that? That was an easy way of finding it out.
At the same time, the station developed and aired a series of focus spots designed to break down prejudices and help bridge the gaps among the many groups that seem to be polarizing the city. They were unique. Members of the community, from corporate executives and leaders of minority groups, to dropout teenagers and former drug addicts. They all ad-libbed a one-minute message of information and help. The third series, inaugurated in 1968, was the Harlem Cultural Festival. With the help of the Parks Department, Mount Morris Park became the setting for a series of pop concerts. The first show featured the great Count Basie and his orchestra.
Our weekly public affairs series, Off the Set, gives all our on-air personalities a chance to explore issues in depth.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Lick.
This one aired last April.
What are the chances of a woman vice presidential candidate this year?
For anyone to think that a woman can't do it, you just got to think of the guys who run for president and who've been president. And then Americans have got to start understanding. Now, I realize that that doesn't happen overnight, and that will be a process of education, but it's going to happen, and we just can't only rely on the polls.
In 1980, we decided to celebrate New York in a big, small way. Big Apple Minutes were started as an experiment. A run of about 6 weeks was expected. 4 years and several hundred bushels later, the apple still crunches 3 times an evening, and there's no end of locations in sight.
Visit the New York Botanical Garden, right here in the Bronx.
What's that, a different Brand Union price finder?
Oh, Helen, yes, a Red Dot special price finder. It shows all the store specials.
I don't have to look all over for them? They're all right there?
Not only that, you don't wait for weekly food ads for specials. You get them all here every single day.
Hey, I'll check my shopping list against this. I won't miss any bargains.
Right, and they still have the regular price finder that proves their low regular prices.
The regular price finder for low regular prices and the Red Dot special price finder for specials. ShopRite and Pathmark don't do it. Grand Union does.
Patty just found a terrific new diaper.
Oh,
I know, Patty. It's her new Pampers, and they've really changed. Just look at that great new shape. You're right. It's almost shaped just like a baby, and they stay so dry now. Patty can just about say bye-bye to wetness.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
She thinks it's because they're so much thicker now, to absorb more.
And do us up more.
That's right. Her old Pampers couldn't absorb all this in a million years, but these new Pampers absorb more than ever to really stay dry next to baby's skin. And these wonderful new double elastics.
What?
You're right. It really fits nice and snug.
Oh.
Today's new Pampers, they stay so dry now, your baby can just about say bye-bye to wetness. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's the all-new Star Search 85. Morgan Fairchild and David Hasselhoff join host Ed McMahon for the hottest talent hunt on television. Who will be the superstar of tomorrow? Find out on the all-new Star Search 85. Gorgeous models, sensational singers, dazzling dancers, hilarious comedians, and more. It's an all-new year with all-new stars. It's Star Search 85.
8 p.m. Sunday on Channel 5.
New York is a unique environment for children's programming. There are an astounding number of places to visit with a television camera. Hundreds and hundreds of potential guests, and it's possible to get high-caliber talent to host the programs. It's no wonder that Channel 5 has had such a rich array of children's programs hosted by a wild assortment of talented men and women, including Sandy Becker and friends.
Gee, it's hard to believe that it's been 30 years since Marvin Mouse and Stanley Q and Giba Giba. You know, some folks never seem to age. Huh? You watch it.
I'm not signing Giba Giba up anything. He's not a vegetable. We're not going to get into that kind of a routine. Now, just stop it. Stop what? Stop the business of trying to sell poor Giba Giba into a carnival. I think that's horrible. Never had that in mind, my friend. All I want them to do is sign a little piece of paper.
You know, it's amazing how one becomes involved with their puppets. Huh? You watch it. How about you? What was the first children's program that you ever watched? Well, one of the first children's programs on Channel 5 was The Magic Carpet. Magic Carpet was so named not by coincidence, as the sponsor was the Alexander Carpet Company, and the Small Fry Club with Big Brother Bob Emery, television's first daily show for kids. The timing was appropriate. The baby boom was just beginning. 2 years after Channel 5 began, Dr. Benjamin Spock came out with the first edition of Baby and Child Care, which has gone on to sell some 130 million copies. And that's probably even more kids than watched the most popular children's program of the late 40s and 50s.
Fighting for law and order, Captain Video operates from a mountain retreat with secret agents at all points of the globe. Possessing scientific secrets and scientific weapons, Captain Video asks no quarter and gives none to the forces of evil. Stand by for Captain Video and his Video Rangers.
Off on another dangerous mission for Captain Video, the Video Ranger dons one of his most important pieces of equipment, the secret identifying ring.
Plenty of you Rangers haven't gotten your ring yet. Why, get one right away. And wear it at all times to show that you're on the side of Captain Video fighting to defend law and order.
Do you still have your ring, Video Rangers? I still have mine someplace, but a friend of mine who's with me, Fred Scott, who was the announcer on Captain Video, still has his. Uncle Fred?
Yeah, thank you, Don. I certainly do. As a matter of fact, it's right here. Not only the ring, but this is something that was very popular in the days of Captain Video.
Luckily, we were in black and white.
Yeah, that's right. The old lightning strike across the front here, our uniform. You remember that well, Donald?
I sure do. I sure do. I spent 6 years in one like that, or the original ones were khaki. But, we got very fancy toward the end. It started out with a scenery budget of, I believe scenery and props were $15 a week. And you couldn't accrue any of that. If you didn't spend it all, you didn't get any of it next week. You had to spend it. Our original rocket ship was just, I guess, a 5-foot flat, and everything was painted behind us, and we had 2 kitchen chairs that we sat in.
We used a lot of guns, ray guns, and so forth. Where did we get all that equipment?
And all of that was highly secret stuff. The Pentagon is still tracking most of it down. It came from the automobile department of Wanamaker's department store.
You know what I remember about the show? It was kind of interesting to me because that was kind of my part of the show. I used to bring in the old Western films. Remember, that was an integral part of the show.
What do you say we check on our Texas agents, Wakely and White, and see what kind of an alibi Jane Morgan has for them? Rangers, stand by for Texas. Mark this record file number MRB-310. Come in, please. Sharp focus.
How about the times the old Western film would break? This old brittle film, it must have been 20, 30 years old then.
Then, yeah.
And the film would break, and we'd have to ad-lib.
That was the original idea of the show going on, was to show cowboy films. Then the kids that were watching the show decided they liked Captain Video, first Dick Coogan and then Al Hodge, and Fred and myself and Ben Lackland, who was commissioned to carry, and probably every actor in New York who needed 25 bucks did that show. Then there's that famous scene where the budget was low that week, I guess, and we couldn't afford any extras. After all, we were all making $25 a show. Yeah. How far could it go? And we used cardboard cutouts as a poor actor was trying to make a long, serious speech.
Oh, I remember that scene.
There's a great ovation at the end of that scene. You'll notice that nobody moves. The heads don't move, but the hands are
claws are really going.
I don't know. There was a college campus attitude about working at Dumont, too. I think not only were we together 5 days a week or 6 days a week, we used to go out together.
Right.
Double date, and then all of us got married, and now we're all dead.
Not quite.
But it was probably 6 of the happiest years of my life. But no matter what would happen.
Would you be good enough to remove the Ranger from the control panel?
Yeah, sure.
Will you go quiet, buddy?
At the end of every episode, Fred Scott would say,
"Well, Rangers, the plot gets thicker and thicker."
Will Captain Video and the Ranger discover the sinister trick that has been played on them? Or will Jumo's evil scheme succeed so that they sleep on into inertia and pass the dreaded perimeter?
Well, of course he will. That was one of the pleasures of children's adventure stories. We knew the hero or heroine would always win. Maybe not that episode, but sometime soon. And the painted sets and the imitation ray guns and special effects were so real because we believed.
Many of the characters that I developed on the show defy explanation. I remember one of the most popular characters of all that I did was Hambone. You know, people often ask me, how did you come to think of Hambone? Well, I wish there were an elaborate and involved story, but it goes no further than having heard the music, the Hambone music on the radio. This is Hambone now, the way we finally got him to be quite sophisticated, and in fact, there are several Hambones. They were called the Hamboneers.
When I first went to work for Channel 5, actually, it was Dumont at that time. My partner and I, Paul Ashley, who was one of the greatest puppet makers in the world, he did a show called Rudy Kazootie. And Sandy Becker hired Paul and I to, actually Paul, to build a puppet for him called Giba Giba. And in the course of dealing with Sandy saw my crazy kind of shenanigans, and he suggested to me that I do his show. When do I start? And he had a suitcase in his hand. He said, he gets in the elevator, he says, you start Monday. I said, Monday? I said, me alone? He says, yeah. He said, don't worry about it, you'll have fun. I said, how long is the show, Sandy? He said, 2 hours and 45 minutes. And the door goes, Zadong. So the Monday morning, I got up extra early because it went on the air, I think it was 7:45. was the sign on. And I get down there with my bag of props and all these sketches and drawings and things. See? That was the baptism by fire. And after 2 hours and 45 minutes, how I got through that day, oh.
Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Hey, put on a happy face.
Actually, I started out with 32 characters on the show, and I was able to get in and out of each one of those characters during a 1-minute commercial break. All the costumes were Velcro, and Carmen Gabia and I we developed a very heavy line, kind of cartoony kind of mask makeup that I could put on very quickly with Carmen's help. With the assistance of my buddy Paul Ashley, who played all the other characters. First time I did Bombo, the program manager came down and I asked for a prop cannon, which they didn't have the money for, so I built my own. I went out and I got a construction tube that they make big buttresses for freeways, and that was the shaft of it, and it was made of very thick cardboard, huge thing, strong enough to hold cement and concrete. And one of the stagehands, I forget if it was Big Ed or Little Ed, said, well, we'll back up the back of it, you know, and we'll put the flash powder in there. Well, what we created was, in essence, a real cannon.
1, 2, 3, fire! Ladies and gentlemen, wasn't that wonderful? There, you idiot, in the cannon. Oh, my goodness. You wanted this. You got it. Come on up. Somebody help me out. Come on.
We literally blew the control room window out, and the walls went wah, 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 wah. So the program manager, needless to say, Bombo will do no more explosions. You know. So Bombo didn't, but everybody else did.
Golly, I'm the luckiest man in the whole wide world.
All right, I'd like to say a few words about Channel 5 40 years ago. It was at 515 Madison Avenue, a very small little studio, and everything was live. We did our show there, the Johnny Olson Rumpus Room, with my wife Penny, in doing a variety of shows on Channel 5. One that we had was Kids and Company, with the still popular tap dancers and an occasional baton twirler. You know, this kid is probably a 45-year-old, highly successful stockbroker on Wall Street today. All brought to you by a friendly goose.
Johnny Olson! Hey, hey! Oh! Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Red Goose, and hi!
There's an old saying that the two things you don't ever want to do is work with kids or animals. Well, of course, we did all that all the time. And for the kids, it was wonderful. But the animals, there's a little truth in that.
This is Sidney over here, looking for something to eat in my pocket, as you can see. All right, Sidney. All right. Just take... Uh-oh, there goes my jacket. Sidney is a guest on Wonderama today, and if it seems strange to have a guest like this in the studio, the answer is we're not in the studio. All right, there goes...
I think the elephant won. We didn't have a lot of money to do these shows. And as a matter of fact, I used to take up a collection from the kids, you know, buy props. And so the acts we got were not really the top acts. Okay, I'll admit that. They weren't the acts that were going on Ed Sullivan. But we did what we could. And this one, for instance, was a dog act. And then, you know, hey, a trained dog that would do work and jump over the kids seemed like okay. It would fill a few minutes. So I figured, okay, we'll book this act. And this is the way a cheap act looked on Wonderama.
Come on, sweetheart. Here it comes. Over the top. Honey, I say. Oh, yeah. Come on, sweetheart.
A lot of memories about Wonderama, some of them poignant. And here's one of them.
You consider yourself a politician?
Yes. Being a politician is a way to achieve something. A politician is not just someone who runs for office, because then when that's over, he's supposed to be working for you, doing some things for you, and accomplishing something for the country. So I think it's something that you would like, if you become it, you should become interested in it. because it's going to affect your lives, and it's going to affect your children's lives, and what kind of a country this is going to be.
No review of programs on Channel 5, supposedly for young people, but perhaps more accurately for the child in all of us, would be complete without Soupy Sales.
The format of the show was interesting to the point where I was like basically a traffic cop, because it was things that happened inside my house. All I was trying to do was to get through the day. And I became Mr. Everyman. Like after I got through working out with the dogs up in front, I would say, now let's go to the words of wisdom. And we had great words of wisdom. And great words of wisdom like, be true to your teeth and they won't be false to you. And people who eat sweets take up 2 seats. I had puppets, White Fang and Black Tooth, and they were imaginary dogs.
Yeah? Does he sing? No. Does he dance? No. Does he tell funny stories? No. Why bring him in here? I have to. He's my manager.
The pies were very important.
The ascots are 13 and the crevettes are 36. What kind of score is that? It's a tie score. What? I don't want to have anything more to do with them cows. Why? What happened? Somebody gave me a bum steer.
Of course, we had a lot of people that got hit in the face with pies over the years.
They came in seeing you guys were eating here, and I went over there and he ordered pie.
I'd never come to this joint again. I'd like to see somebody do that to one of us.
Well, wait a minute. There were 3 of you and there's 2 of him. He's the one that brought the kid. Wait a minute. I was sitting here with my daddy, and we ordered pie, and he comes in and he goes, pop! He's like that. No, wait a minute. I was trying to take good care of you. You wait just a moment. Hey, you can't do that to my leader.
Here's your leader.
No, there's your leader. No, I was just a moment. Wait a minute. Come here.
Nothing makes life in New York more livable than New York Telephone.
You know I can't live without you. I can't smile without you. I can't laugh and I can't sing. I'm finding it hard to do anything.
You know, whenever you pick up a phone and hear the dial tone, that's us at work. Because New York Telephone is always working, the same way we have been for nearly a century. Serving business with the latest technology and serving all New York Telephone customers with the best possible service at the lowest possible rates. Now, what could make life in New York more livable than that?
I'm finding it hard to do anything. I can't live without
New York lives on New York Telephone.
Can't smile without.
With this new price finder for specials, you won't miss specials. It's a new way to shop for bargains. The new Grand Union Price Finder for specials contains all the specials in the store, hundreds of them. Here's a sample. Lipton tea bags, 100 count, only $1.49 with coupon. Post Raisin Bran, 20-ounce box, just $1.59. Aunt Jemima Original Pancake Mix, 2-pound box, 79 cents. The Grand Union Price Finder for specials helps you find the best prices every day.
CM Magazine has got a fall for you. The brightest stars, the latest trends, the most exciting adventure. Fall into the habit with CM Magazine at its new time, 8:30 weeknights, following Rituals right here on Channel 5.
This is an early Dumont camera, and this is an early Dumont scientist who helped design it, and the TV sets. Dr. Thomas T. Goldsmith, a colleague of Dr. Dumont's, and from whom the network's Washington station got its call letters, WTTG. Dr. Goldsmith, what happened to Dumont Television?
3 reasons why the Dumont network had to give up. Number 1, they didn't have enough dollars. Number 2, the FCC didn't have enough channels to establish, competitive networks in most of the major cities. And number 3, the radio stations owned by the other networks were a basis for expanding into television. Dumont didn't start out with a chain of radio stations. So those 3 reasons are why the Dumont network had to fold up. But it still continued with Metro Media, which is an independent network now, and the Dumont stations turned over to Metro Media, and the spin-off in 1955 started Metro Media, which has expanded under John Kluge into a tremendous operation.
Looking back, Dr. Goldsmith, what would you say is the most exciting moment for you personally in television?
We were doing the Yankee Stadium baseball games up there. We were setting up a new microwave on top of the roof of Yankee Stadium, and I was personally adjusting the transmitter for that thing. I reached over on the knob to change the gain level. Fortunately, I'd put an insulating handle on that knob, and the power supply took off at that time and sparked 1,000 volts, 2 amperes back of it, and knocked me 15 feet across on the roof, not quite over the roof. Well, that was a kind of a scary situation in early television.
Thank you, Dr. Goldsmith. Glad you're still with us. Glad you didn't go over that roof. But talking about the Yankee Stadium leads us rather smoothly into the staple of early television, sports.
When you talk about television and sports, in 1946 compared to 1984, it's 2 different things. The sophistication of today is something which is accepted as normal television. Sophistication in 1946 would mean 3 cameras, period, in black and white, no tape, no zoom-R lenses, no replays, no anything. Boxing and wrestling were the mainstay in the early part of our programming. And it's wonderful to remember wrestling. Wrestling went over real big. Dennis James was our announcer. It was great.
Howdy, 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 sports fans. That's the way I used to introduce all the sporting events that I did starting over 40 years ago on the Dumont Television Network. We did baseball, football, basketball, just about every sport, and of course, boxing and wrestling. And when we did the wrestling, we made a variety show out of it. Besides watching the wrestlers wrestle, I added sound effects. If a person was twisting another one's arm or leg, this is what you'd hear. I used a crackle bone that I'd gotten down at a department store, a sporting goods store. If a wrestler threw another wrestler over his head, I would do this. As he got up off the ground, if they'd bend over, we'd tear a window shade, so you'd think he was tearing his trunks. So we gave a lot of variety to a wrestling match. And of course, wrestling today is still a very, very popular, entertaining sport.
I'm Chris Schenkel. For 6 years, I never missed a telecast of the Monday night fights on Dumont. They were 52 weeks a year, and saying I never missed one, even when I was married, which was on Sunday, I came back the following night on Monday to do the telecast, and my wife has never allowed me to forget it since. I was brought to New York in 1952 to do the New York football Giant games. They were televised by Dumont. And continuing the sports tradition, WNEW-TV now has the Jets preseason games. Each week we broadcast an interview with a player. Here it's Jack Scarbath, quarterback on Jim Tatum's University of Maryland Terrapins. Then Jack played with the Washington Redskins. The gimmick of the show was to freeze the play to see it better. This was before stop motion, slow motion, even before videotape. It was done on film, and we thought something quite special.
Hello, I'm Bill Mazer. Gonna let you in on a secret. I was working here at Channel 5 in 1947. Of course, I was very small, and I just subbed for Dennis James. Must not have impressed them very much, because they didn't hire me again till the 1970s. And then it was for Sports Extra. And at the time, they thought Sports Extra would go for just 13 weeks. And here we are, closing in on 13 years. The Islanders, in infancy, went on to win Stanley Cup championships. Did he play? Remember the night against Charlie Huff? 3 home runs in one World Series game. The Yankees had done it, just as the Mets had done it in '69 and later in '73. There were glorious moments for Mets, particularly for Tom Seaver. New York loved them. That sound. How I remember the first time I saw it, the New York City Marathon. We were there to broadcast the New York City Marathon one year. How about Julius and the Nets? Remember the doc?
It's as sweet as it ever was. I tell you, now hopefully we've started something and we can keep on and win some more championships in the years to come. But we're going to enjoy this one right now. Have a little champagne.
Slightly different looking Julius, wasn't it? How about the Knicks? Monroe and Frazier and DeBusschere and Bill Bradley. And of course, the captain, Willis Reed.
Thank you.
But what would New York be without Billy and George?
Well, we straighten a lot of things out. They'll, for instance, I'll be handling all the trades.
What do you mean?
There'll be no phone calls in the dugout.
What do you mean? That's not right. I'm handling the trades.
That isn't the way we say
I have the right to call you in the dugout.
That's not the way it's going to be, George.
Well, you're damn right it is, and if you don't like it, you're fired.
We haven't hired you yet.
And the Yankees leads us, perhaps a bit circuitously, to a gentleman who, at his ceremony of investiture, showed he knew how to make an instant impact in New York, and then topped himself the next day, Archbishop John J. O'Connor.
I do have the mitre of the Archbishop of New York, and George Steinbrenner was kind enough to send me a Yankees hat. The New York Mets wanted to make absolutely certain that there was no favoritism, and so today, even when I was a kid in my teens, Fulton Sheen, as he was so popularly known, was a famous radio star. He was a professor at Catholic University at the time, could have been a tremendous scholar, was indeed a true scholar, but turned to popularizing scholarly truths. Had he done nothing but research and writing, he would have become famous for that alone, I think. But thank the good Lord that he did popularize. And when I was young, it was practically required in every household that we listen to Fulton Sheen on the radio, so that when he went on television, we were all in our glory. We were able to see him at will. We knew the impact that he would have on the country at large, and he did have such an impact.
There are actually two causes of war: the external and the internal causes of war. Now suppose I elaborate some of those on our blackboard. Our little angel is working very much faster now. He found out that he swabbed decks too quickly last week. So our angel, the Admiral, has acquired much more dexterity. The external causes of war first, and then the internal. The external causes of war, according to William Penn, are three: to get, to keep, to recover. And that pretty well explains all wars without cynicism, at least.
I was Bishop Sheen's angel. And he was a very impressive man, very intelligent, and very easy to work for. And I could remember one incident in particular that struck me, to me personally, was very strange. That was when the Archbishop was appointed to the Archdiocese of New York. He came running into the studio while Bishop Sheen was going to do his show, and he wanted to meet his Jewish angel. Well, between Bishop Sheen and the new cardinal, I became petrified, and I ran out of the studio. Later, they brought me back, and they cornered me in the makeup room, and we shook hands, and he started explaining certain things to me, and I wished him lots of luck, and that was, to me, was a very, very memorable experience.
I'm a little sad because I have to leave you, but with joy I say, bye now, God love you.
This booklet, the Grand Union Price Finder, helped you find the lowest regular supermarket prices. It has no specials in it, but this new Red Dot Special Price Finder has all the specials in your Grand Union, hundreds of them. Don't wait for weekly newspaper ads. Don't wonder if you'll miss the best specials. Get a free Red Dot Special Price Finder. Check your shopping list with it and save. Grand Union proves low regular prices in the regular price finder and now gives you all their special prices in the Red Dot Special Price Finder. ShopRite and Pathmark don't do it. Grand Union does.
Stick 'em here, stick 'em there. New Pampers refasten anywhere.
New Pampers now have refastenable tapes. Easy to use refastenable tapes that stick anywhere, over and over again. It makes checking your baby's diapers simple, quick, and easy.
Stick 'em here, stick 'em there. New Pampers refasten everywhere.
New Pampers, now with refastenable tapes.
It's really easy, isn't it? Huh?
Every weeknight at 9, New York Telephone lowers its rates 35%, which makes life in New York a lot more livable.
I can't live without you. I can't smile without you. I can't laugh and I can't sing.
35% lower rates after 9 p.m. Now, what could make life in New York more livable than that? New York lives on New York Telephone.
What a rich panoply of programs that carried the Channel 5 logo. We've seen nearly 100 bits and snippets of news events and sports coverage, slick detectives and inept dog acts, music and more music, lots of talk. Yet it's just a tiny survey of the shows and talent appearing on this station over the last 40 years. In traditional showbiz fashion, we've saved a few of the best for last. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Maury Amsterdam.
Oh, it's been, I'm so enthused and I feel so great. We just came back from Florida. Tell us about it. I will, and he did. My wife and I went down, and as my mother-in-law and our son, I steered. My mother-in-law drove. And, of course, the hotel rooms, I went in, I signed the register. The manager was very nice. He gave me a room, very homey. We have little signs over the beds. Says, sleep here and the angels watch over you. A couple of them bit me. Well, I should have expected it. When I signed the register, just as the ink was drying, a cockroach walked over my name. Not bad enough to find him in bed. They come down to see what room you're in.
I know you'll be happy to find out that the jokes you just heard have been returned to the Smithsonian Institute. Although I must say honestly that I don't think there's any such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it before. And we had a lot of them in those days, although they were new jokes in those days. Really? Yes.
Heard of Evelyn and her magic violin? Meet Maury and his miserable cello.
Now, you'll have to picture the orchestra. We couldn't get them all in the living room. But I happened to mention my friend Art Carney. When he was with me on my radio show first for about a year, and then when we moved into television, why, he came right along with us. No, Art was a very fine mimic. He's a fine musician, and he's just an all-around good talent. He's a great talent.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Newton, our best waiter. I like it. Newton and I have been pals for years. Is that right?
That's right.
As a matter of fact, we're kind of distantly related. You see, Newton's mother and my mother are mothers. Hey, you look real sharp.
Oh, you're looking real sharp, too, kid. But I'm telling you, every day you get to look more like Gabby Hayes.
Well, thank you.
The other regular on our show was a girl named Jacqueline Suzanne. Yeah, the same one who wrote Valley of the Dolls and a lot of other big hit books. She played kind of a, oh, I guess you'd call it a dumb cigarette girl.
So what else is new?
What else is new? Oh, yes. The other day I went to
my first baseball game.
Well, bully for you. How'd you like it?
Oh, it was dreadful.
What do you mean dreadful? Everybody likes baseball.
No.
Sure.
Maury, it's the silliest thing I've ever seen. Imagine grown men running around in long stockings and little short pants from beanbag to beanbag trying to hit a poor little defenseless ball.
You don't get the idea. You see, the fellas throw...
Oh, no, and there was one man who stood there, and every time a ball was thrown at him, he tried to hit it with a big stick.
That was a bat.
A bat?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see any wings on it. But they must have had
a bat. You're thinking of the kind
Oh, no. They had a very guilty conscience because every time they hit this poor little ball, they'd drop the stick and then they'd start running.
Well, you see, they make a hit.
A hit? Well, they certainly didn't make a hit with me.
Now, the kind of routines that I did with Art Carney were a little different. He was, well, I guess today you'd call him kind of sexist.
My girl's got a face like a duck.
There it is. Ah, this I got.
That's a picture of her standing next to a new Dumont television set.
Hey, looks nice. Very nice, yeah.
Boy, get that shape, huh?
Yeah, very nice shape.
Yeah.
Nice shape. On your girl?
On the television set.
Looks nice.
How do you like that mahogany finish, too, huh?
Yeah, on the television set.
No, on my girl.
Hey, that's a very unusual shawl she's wearing. I like the way it hangs down around her shoulders.
Shawl?
Yeah.
That's no shawl, that's a riz.
The Admiral Broadway Review was carried by both NBC and Dumont simultaneously. The reasons are lost in time. Preserved in this first show in which they are together, and they aren't together much, are Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca.
Well, fellas, what'll it be? Personally, I recommend the roast beef. Roast beef. Roast beef. Zagranicze bakwijten. Hello, comrade operator. I would like to talk with Kremlin, 61000. Hello? I would like to talk with Marshal Joseph Stalin. Hello? Маршал Сталин! Вот я челохлайчика люди, признаете, здравствуйте, да-да-да, как теперь отец, на русском, по-мужски говорите, да-да, до свидания, понимаю, хорошо, до земли, челохляя, у правды, у Совета, у Сталина, ура, ура, ура! Listen, Joe. Не пейте, за как наите, понимаете, захруится, то кто не понизит, краится, захруни, мойте, захлевай, розби. Что же, понимаете? А joint, 5 стебни, прахта и сахтаю. Что не пейте, как не ните, похлывай. But you're very hungry, как не язык лайте его не... А, да. Да-да. Bosh!
The sketch about the waiter from the UN was a sketch that we took from Make My Manhattan. We did that, and I did another number from that. All the rest of the hour and a half was new. Everybody is so preoccupied with new, and there is new material and old material and old material and new material. What is the difference between old material and new material? Nothing. The only thing, is it funny or is it not funny? That's the only difference. It was the first time I met Imogene, in fact, on the Admiral Broadway Review. Max Lieben, who really was the guiding genius behind this. He introduced the ballet to television, introduced opera. It was quite a cultural feat, and mixing that so to be entertaining also is also another kind of feat. You can make fun as a satire, which is a gentle touch, which you make fun of, but with taste.
The techniques of television comedy took a giant leap forward with Ernie Kovacs. He broke out of the mold of vaudeville and was as innovative as the first directors of silent pictures. Most Most of us are familiar with the Nairobi Trio, Percy Dovetons, and the other Kovacs cast of characters. But I didn't remember that one of his daily shows on Channel 5 was called the Ernie Kovacs Rehearsal. For good reason. That's what it looked like. That's what it was.
And I'm having the first half of the show kinnied. You know how much it cost me to talk just now for 2 minutes? About $40. Now I paid $40 to record what I just said. I say things around the house that are funny for nothing. I come down here and I can't think of anything. I'm paying $40 to have it recorded.
Here's your change.
Somebody in the audience, thank you. Somebody think of something funny because the show's being kinnied. Would you? We want to have a laugh at the opening. You, sir, have anything? Oh, here's something funny already. They can't even see the show. The monitor's not working. Could somebody plug it in for them?
Takes only to laugh.
Here it is. The plug is out in the back. Just over here, Mr. Kaminsky. Thank you, sir. This little plug here, this gadget is out. That's all.
That's all right.
It's only a small... I just want Dumont to know ahead of time that if you think I'm going to pay you for the time that you're kinning while I'm fixing up your equipment...
One of the bits that he did was to put himself into a movie. Now, very few people were doing matting, or what do they call it, key insert, whatever it's called now. That means that you stand in front of a blue, now for the weather and whatever, it's a green background, and then you run a film behind it. Then you can walk in and out of the film. And that was first started here. And if it tore out or ripped a little bit, he didn't care. He figured nobody was watching anyway.
Very good. No. Your fingers. No, you're too... No. Do that again. No, the fingers were stiff. The fingers are stiff. That's it. That second finger is still stiff. Still stiff. Yeah. Once more. Yeah. I don't know. All right, now walk in. That's it. Walk in. And now knock at the door. Knock at the door, you dope. That's better. All right. All right, now last time your fingers were too stiff. Make up. Wash that hand, will you? All right. Good. Okay. No, not that way. Come back. Come here. Come back. Now this time we'll do something different. Don't take the box, see? Just reach for it and then go back. Don't take the box! Hey, don't be. This way. Okay, we're gonna knock off for lunch. Okay, knock off for lunch. Put the box back, buddy. We're gonna knock off. Get your hands out. We're knocking off for lunch. Don't touch the box. Cut!
40 years of laughter. You know, one of the people I remembered when I was creating the character of Archie goes back to those Dumont days. I got more than one idea from Jackie Gleason's Joe the Bartender.
Oh, hiya, Mr. Dunny. Come on in. Hey, you're looking pretty good, pal. What you have? Same thing? Coming up. No, the pipes are still busted. Hey, did you hear the scandal? About Bookshelf Robinson and his wife. Yeah, it happened the other day. Well, Bookshelf's wife dropped into his office unexpectedly. And she catches him with his secretary on his lap. But you gotta give that Robinson credit. He thinks fast. He made out like he didn't see her come in, see? And he starts dictating. He says, take a letter to the Acme Furniture Company. I don't care if there is a furniture shortage, I gotta have another chair. Say, that's a mighty slick banister. Dear old Doc, As a token of my esteem on Father's Day, may I present you with this little gift? Well, thank you, son. Say no more, my dear. Not every father can boast of having his son save his life on Father's Day. Hello, Mabel. It worked. The party's on. We got the whole joint to ourselves.
We seem to have come full circle. I wonder what Dr. Dumont would think now of what he began. All of us who have worked on this salute to Dr. Dumont and to Metro Media and Channel 5 have come to realize that for such a young medium of communication, television does possess a vibrant history. In watching today's programs, we forget what they grew from, how live television honed a comic's timing, how the power and intimacy of a tight close-up changed the way a scene could be written and should be directed. We take for granted the immediacy of the news and of the dazzling technology that brings it all into our homes. I think that I'd forgotten the feeling of a band of brothers and sisters, of the closeness of the people behind and in front of the cameras, and the pure fun of early television. These recollections have been our gift to you and to ourselves, the remembrance of 40 years of fine-tuning.
40 years of fine-tuning was brought to you by Grand Union. Find all the special prices in the store with the new Price Finder for specials. And by New York Telephone, a NYNEX company. New York lives on New York Telephone. And by Procter & Gamble's Pampers. America's mothers trust their babies to Pampers Dryness.
Coming up at 10, Judy Lick looks at the future of music television, and Stu reviews the Japanese movie that won the grand prize at the Cannes Film Festival this year. Join us at 10.
Flight 29, now boarding.
Have a good trip. My wallet's gone.
What?
Check your bags. No, wait.
Well, is it...
I'll check the cab. Let's move it! No, it's not here.
Money, our traveler's check.
Traveler's checks? You can get a refund at the American Express machine inside.
No, we can't.
Sure, it's next to the...
No, they weren't American Express.
Check out.